Welcome, my name is Zala and I am an art restorer who loves baking. I challenged myself to attempt all sweet recipes from my 1912 6th edition of Slovenska Kuharica. Hello everyone! Today we're making our third kuh, which is strawberry kuh, and my point in making this is to see if flouring the molds changes anything. Since the previous two that I made, I omitted that step intentionally or no. So yes, I'm gonna keep whatever I can, exactly the same as with those two, and change the flouring as the general section of this book states that you should do with kuhs. And this recipe does not say that you should be making it the same as the raspberry one. It has its own instructions and it differs a little bit. So let's go through it and see what we will do about it. Okay, strawberry kuh. It says you should grate one bread roll, okay, same as the previous two. Soak it in milk, presumably cut again, and yes, 2 eggs of butter. And okay, in this one it says that you should put coffee cream inside, and in our stores the creams are divided between 3 categories. It's like 10%, which is the cream for coffee. We have, I think, 20% for cooking cream, and 30 to 35% for like regular sweet cream or whipped cream. So this recipe calls for the coffee cream, which is 10% cream. So it's more milk-like and not so rich. And it says that you should saute it a bit, and that this is called a béchamel. And I was curious about this because usually when I make béchamel for lasagna or something like that, when I'm cooking, I make it with flour, butter and milk. So I actually went to check in this book if there is anything on this in the general section, and there actually is. Right here there are 3 recipes for 3 different bechamels. One is bread roll bechamel, one is hearty bechamel, and you also have a hearty bechamel for non-sweet dishes. So actually the bread roll bechamel and the non-sweet are for regular cooking, which include onions, and this one, hearty bechamel, is the one that is the most similar to what she calls bechamel in this recipe. And let's see what it says. It says raw butter and flour, and you should put them together and then put in either cream or milk and stir so it's smooth, and then that it's done, which is interesting because that's the way that I'm usually doing it myself. But with this recipe she does not put flour in at all, and what I find so curious is how interchangeable bread is with flour in her view. So after making this béchamel, she says that you should put it in a dish and stir in egg yolks, strawberries, sugar, and 5 egg whites beaten to stiff peaks. And it's interesting because before, with the redcurrant and raspberry one, we were stirring in the fruits while we were sauteing it, and here she says that you should be stirring in these strawberries after you already have it sauteed and in a dish. And here it actually says more clearly that, if you remember when I was asking myself in the previous videos if breadcrumbs are okay to be mixed in the beginning or later on, because the recipe didn't make it so very obvious, Here she actually finishes that sentence, and within the new sentence she says that you should be stirring in the breadcrumbs afterwards. Here she says that you should be putting it in a greased up mold, which from the general section we know that it should be floured as well, so that's what we're gonna do this time. And it says that you can also bake it on the steam, because in the previous two she says that they should be baked in oven, even though in the general section again it says that Kuch's baking method is interchangeable, like if you cook it or bake it. After you cook it, you should put it in a bowl and pour chateau over it, in which you should put also strawberries, so that you give it color after it's already thickened up. I am not gonna be touching this chateau recipe because this is a separate recipe within this book, so I'm thinking that maybe we're gonna focus on the Kuch itself. I'm still gonna make the chateau, but I think I'm just gonna make a separate video highlighting it next week. So I'm still gonna be using it, but only as an ingredient this time. So yes, I don't know what this recipe is gonna prove, since we have quite some variables that are different from the previous two recipes. But let's still make it and see what the commonalities actually are between the previous two Kuchs and this one. And one final thing, I am also excited if this flouring the molds will at all affect the rise of the Kuch itself. So with all that in mind, let's get baking and see what happens. I started by grating the crust off of one bread roll, and this week I actually remembered to buy one, so woohoo! I didn't have a weird home-baked one. And from the experience from last week, because I felt like the tinier bread pieces gave a good outcome, I decided to cut it a little bit smaller in this Kuch as well. And I was thinking, I really find it interesting how much bread was used as an ingredient back then, because now if I look at the recipes around me, I rarely find bread as an ingredient. But in Felicita's time it was either bread or breadcrumbs, so it goes to show how connected our people were to bread itself. And after I cut it up, I soaked it in the milk. I used the same amount of milk and same amount of bread as in the previous two recipes. And while the bread was soaking, I melted 2 egg worths of butter, and I kind of started worrying about the flour cream substitution, because that did sound to me like that it will give quite a different result, because instead of something that is intended to absorb liquid, we end up adding in more liquid. But I just went on and followed the recipe. So after pouring in the heavy cream and adding the bread, I sauteed it until I started to see the bread starting to turn brown. And as I was doing this step, it seemed so fatty to me. In the previous two versions of Kuch that I made, I did not have this feeling of too much butter, but in this one it just seemed to me like bread is swimming in it. So I was really starting to question myself if I should have put less, but that probably was in part because we did not add in flour, which would help soak up the extra fat that just got left in the pan now. So after the mixture cooled down, I mixed in the egg yolks that the recipe calls for, and I took out my strawberries, which were frozen like the red currant was. I heated them up a bit, and even though the recipe calls for mashing them through a sieve, I opted for a stick blender this time, because I thought to myself that with the raspberries and red currant, the sieve was meant mostly for keeping the little seeds out of the final bake. So with strawberries that do not have as prominent seeds as raspberries and red currant does, I just decided that it would be easier to just puree it and that the effect would basically be the same. So I went on and did that, and when the strawberry puree cooled down, I just poured it in to the egg yolk mixture and mixed it in. And that was another big difference between the previous recipes and this one, because when I mixed the fruit into the sauteing bread and butter mixture, the liquid in the fruit got the chance to evaporate. So this time I added it in afterwards, so all of the juices that those raspberries contained went into the final kuch. And also there was a little more of them because there were no seeds being taken out. So if like seeds in raspberries and red currant represented maybe 1/4 of the whole 100 grams that went in, with the raspberries the whole 100 grams went in. So after that I added all of the sugar that the recipe called for and proceeded to mix the egg whites without it. So I mixed the egg whites to stiff peaks, and when I was satisfied with how firm they were, I mixed them in very gently into the egg yolk mixture by hand, and in the end I mixed in the breadcrumbs as well. And as I was mixing them in, I thought to myself, okay, maybe now they won't have that much of a chance to absorb the moisture up before I started to bake them, because when I made raspberry and red currant kuch, I added the breadcrumbs into the egg yolks and left them there while I was beating up the egg whites, and in doing so I actually allowed them to soak up the moisture from the egg yolk mixture, and that made it firmer as I was mixing in the egg whites. So when I was working this mixture, I immediately noticed how runny it is compared to the other ones. So I did get a little bit worried as I was putting it in, but at this point it was too late to do anything about it. Just roll with it. So the molds, as I said that I would, I buttered them and floured them this time and filled them up and baked at 175 degrees for 25 minutes in a water bath. And when I took them out, I was pleasantly surprised to how much they rose while baking, because they actually got these cute little dome shapes that the previous two kuch versions did not have. So I was really excited to see how it would behave on the inside, and as I cut it, it was so much denser than I was hoping, because it looked like a really moistened up bread, not like a fluffy pastry at all. So the only thing left to do was to pour chateau over it with some raspberries mixed in. So that's exactly what I did. And now it was time to see what we made. I have the one with the shuttle, and you have the one without it. And you have none.
Yeah, but she wants some. She hungers.
The strawberry is actually coming through.
It is.
With the previous two, I had a feeling like they had no fruit character whatsoever with the raspberry and redcurrant, but with this one I can actually taste strawberry.
Yeah, I think it's a bit too much strawberry, I guess.
Why?
I don't know. I'm not a fan of strawberries in general. I'm a fan of strawberries plainly, if I eat them, separately.
So
But
just
I don't enjoy
reverse from raspberries.
Yes.
Damn. You are very specific.
I know.
Can I try it alone? Thank you. He knows me well. Yeah.
Right?
It's so
Fruity.
It's so moist. Like the other two were like light and fluffy, weren't they? And this one is just like eating a soggy bread.
Maybe that's the reason I don't enjoy it, but yeah, it's
Now I see why it's served with this chateau.
it's not one of your best ones, unfortunately. I'm sorry, love.
One of this book's best ones, you mean? I do everything perfectly.
Correct. The book led you astray this time. It's weird.
But it did rise more than the other two, weirdly enough.
Maybe it's because the strawberries had more juice in them.
Texture-wise, I think redcurrant was the best.
Yeah, I agree.
So, rating it,
I would say a 5.
I would say it's 6. I still liked it. I like the strawberry.
The strawberry kind of ruins it for me. But yeah, I would say a 5.
So this recipe has the modern book version, and there's also a general section. So in the general section, it says that these molds should be buttered and sprinkled with flour, just as we did now, but it says that it should be done so it does not stick to the molds, which is very fun to me because in the previous episode with redcurrant, I only buttered them because I forgot to put flour, and it did not got stuck to the mold. So my ongoing theory is that it actually helps with the rise, and that's a little bit misstated here. And yeah, that it's not about the release but about the rise. Otherwise, there's nothing that I feel needs mentioning right now. Okay, so now to the recipe comparison. Strawberry kipnik, the name got upgraded from kuh to kipnik, which is a more traditional Slovenian term, not just a Germanism like kuh is. So here it says, wow, okay, I've been putting 100 grams of butter, and here it's 70 grams of butter. That's, I feel like, quite a difference, but maybe it was on the buttery side. It wasn't bad or anything, but I guess I could have put a little less. Then it says milk soaked bun, that with crust grated off, that's the same. It says 4 spoons of coffee cream, that's the same. Eggs. Oh, here it says forest strawberries instead of normal strawberries, so that's a difference. And here's double the amount of sugar that I used. So I used 50 grams, and in here it says 100 grams. But honestly, if you'd ask me, I did not get the feeling that it's lacking sugar. So to me, in the future, if I would be baking, I would stick with 50. And it says 120 grams of breadcrumbs. We only used 100, so that would probably solve the excess runniness, I guess. And oh wow, okay, in the actual directions it says that this doesn't make sense to me. It says that the butter should be beaten until fluffy, and then you should put in the wrung out bun and the cream and then saute it. But I don't understand why the butter should be mixed until fluffy if you're gonna melt it anyway. Maybe if one of you guys has an answer to this, because I genuinely have no idea. Okay, then it's mostly the same. It says when it cools down, you put in strawberries, sugar, egg whites, and in the end the breadcrumbs. And it says to fill the molds, and okay, actually 180 degrees, so that's 5 more than we used. And it says 30 to 40 minutes, but maybe it's the size of the mold used. But in our case, when we used the smaller ones, when I baked the first one, the raspberry one, for 30 minutes, it came out like super duper dark. I don't know. And this one, after 25 minutes, it was baked. The knife came out clean, so I would honestly suggest like less baking time than it's stated here. And okay, chaud d'eau stays the same. So that was an interesting comparison. I ended up with quite some decision differences than the ladies here did. Anyway, as far as these cooks go, I think that this one was denser, quite a lot denser than the previous two, and it was also a lot wetter, so it did not have that fluffy texture that I came to expect from these previous two cook recipes. But it did have more flavor. I think that could be attributed to the larger amount of strawberries, because a part of it does not get taken out because of the seeds, so all of the strawberries go directly in. And I have to say that chaud d'eau is a nice addition, because it does give it a little more of that strawberry flavor and character. So yeah, I think if we would want to avoid it being so dense and wet, we would have to either put the flour back instead of the cream. I don't know why that change is made. And also maybe put the raspberries in while sauteing, so some of the juices already evaporate. So yeah, regarding the thing that we were actually testing, the rise related to the flour, I don't know, because there are so many variables every time. With this recipe specifically, there was a lot, so I can't say if it's exactly because of this because of the flour, but it did rise more than the other two, so I really liked that part at least. So yeah, for the next time I will be making chaud d'eau in 2 episodes time, because first I actually want to make baby biscuits, or savoiardi, because they are supposed to be the traditional biscuit to serve chaud d'eau with, and I just found it in this book, so I thought to myself, now is as good a time as any to try that recipe out as well. So next week, savoiardi, or children's cookies as this book calls them, and next week we have finally our chaud d'eau that we used today, minus the strawberries. So stay with me and have fun. Thank you for watching.